Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good Thursday morning, Financial Issues family. Today is July the 11th of 2024, and we're so glad that you're tuned in. A special welcome to our NRB TV audience. If you're brand new to Financial Issues and have just found us, we encourage you to keep listening because we're a ministry that educates people about financial issues from a biblical worldview. The Bible talks a whole lot about money, and so we want to give you wisdom straight from the scriptures. For just $132 a year, you can partner with us and you can get the details on our biblically responsible investment strategy, where we screen out companies who are using shareholder dollars to promote ungodly agendas like abortion, pornography, the LGBTQ pack of lies, human rights violations, and so many other things. We call that defunding darkness, keeping your money out of the kingdom of darkness. We also encourage you to fund the light. So that is where we encourage you to be an obedient, joyful, and generous giver, and we give you opportunities to do just that. Of course, we encourage you to support your local house of worship, where hopefully you are a member. But in addition to that, support worthwhile ministries like our ministry, financialissues.org, and Preborn Ministries, among many others, so many worthwhile ministries out there. Well, let's get right to our stewardship verse today. It comes from Proverbs 16:3. Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established. So, does the Lord care if your chosen vocation is a plumber or a lawyer or teacher or garbage man or YouTuber or financial advisor or producer of a talk show? You know, it certainly takes all of those vocations to make a productive society. And God gives us all gifts with the intent that we will use them to honor, worship, and glorify Him. So, as long as we acknowledge that our gifts come from the Lord and we desire to honor God and to serve God with those gifts in whichever vocation we choose, our plans will be established. Other versions say, go well, succeed, take place, and be carried out. So, in my experience, God doesn't say no to a request that is in line with and fulfills His will. What do you think?
That's good stuff, Shana. I appreciate the representation there, by the way, in the jobs. That's good. You know, we do talk a lot about planning on the show, and that's what this verse mentions. And I think Christians kind of have a unique relationship with planning because on one hand, we have the anchor of the theology of trusting in God's perfect plan. And no matter what we do, we can't change that. That's up to God and not up to us. What's up to us is obedience. On the other hand, though, we are commanded to use wisdom, to seek wisdom, and to plan well for an uncertain future. God knows the future, but we do not. So we need to plan well. We hold it all with open hands, of course, but we need to plan well nonetheless. And I think we should apply these same principles as we consider our retirement planning. And so, Shana, we talked a little bit about this on yesterday's show. I kind of want to continue that conversation here about how we plan well for retirement. And a topic we didn't get to yesterday was Social Security. And with the uncertainty of kind of the future sustainability of Social Security, how much should we depend on it for our future retirement?
Well, of course, we should depend on the Lord for everything. And,
Yeah.
you know, there's those two extremes. There's the people that say, you know, I'm going to plan out my future every down to the penny, every future expense that I'm going to have. Good luck with that, by the way.
Yeah.
And then there's the other extreme that says, you know, well, Jesus is coming back, so I'm not going to worry about anything. And I think
Right.
both of those extremes are probably need some adjustments to their thinking, you know, because especially when Jesus went back to heaven, his disciples were asking a lot of questions about when he was coming back and all of that. And, you know, one of the things that Jesus just told them was to stay sober and vigilant so that you're not deceived and to be about your Father's business. So he said, do business until I come back. So but really focusing back on Social Security, Social Security was never meant to be a primary income for seniors. So, unfortunately, it is for a lot of seniors. You know, you hear people talk all the time about being on a fixed income, and typically when somebody says that, that just means that they're don't have a company pension, they don't have other assets that they can draw from, that they're fully reliant on what the government is sending them every month from Social Security. And, you know, they should get that because they paid into it. But the fact is that Social Security was never originally supposed to pay for very long, if at all. When the program started back in 1935, only 54% of men and 60% of women who reached age 21 were even expected to make it to age 65, which was retirement date for Social Security. And those that did were only expected to receive benefits for between 12 to 15 years. So today, many more people are reaching age 65, between 72 and 84%, depending on your gender. And those that make it to 65 receive benefits for 15 to 20 years. So there is a whole lot of stress on the Social Security system, not to mention, you know, Congress writing themselves IOUs and dipping into the trust funds and things like that. So, you know, I think it would be foolish to rely very heavily on Social Security as your sole source of income in retirement.
Yeah. And, you know, Shana, it kind of brings to mind, we speak pretty negatively, I think rightly so, on this show about depending on big government to help bail people out, whether it's student loans or giving people free stuff or letting people come into the country and not be documented and then giving them free stuff. And I think this is one of those things, too, that it'd be far better for us to rely on our own hard work over years and years to be able to provide for that.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. I definitely think we need to have some resources set back.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one of those resources, Shana, that we talk about is the company 401k. That's typically one of them. And just a question that I had for you here. We've talked about this before, but I'd love to hear your thoughts again. If a 401k plan through work is not biblically responsible, what should we do? What advice would you have to listeners who have 401k plans that aren't biblically responsible?
Yeah. So most of the options in a 401k plan are not biblically responsible because they're typically just mutual funds that are unscreened. So any unscreened mutual fund is almost by default going to have some companies in it that are not biblically responsible. The good news is that only about 10%, but that number is growing, of publicly traded companies fail the screen for biblically responsible investing, which still leaves a huge universe. But those 10% are the ones that are most widely held in most mutual funds. So if you don't have, I mean, you're likely to have at least one or two biblically responsible options, probably not in the equity area. It's going to be more like a government bond fund or like a stable value fund. And the thing that you can do, especially if you get a match, contribute up to the match so that you get that free money because you've gotten 100% return on the money already, and then deploy that to the biblically responsible funds that you do have in the 401k plan, and then start investment accounts on your own outside of work. And you can still get the pre-tax benefit up to a certain amount in an IRA. You could get a tax-free option with a Roth, or you can just do a regular old investment account.
Yeah, that's good, Shana. And how about for the go-getters in our audience? How about the ones who are, you know, I know we have some folks who listen to the show in their 20s or 30s, and they are starting early and they're ready to go. What advice would you give them as they're getting ready to plan for their retirement, even though it might be 40 or 50 years from this particular point? Yeah,
so, and we say it a lot, but start early.
Yeah.
Even if it's only $10 a month, even if it's, $25, $100 a month, start early, do something. Don't take for granted that you have plenty of time down the road and, you're working and you want to get some, some toys and some things and some pleasures out of the way right now. Make sure that you get in the habit and the discipline of saving and investing. Budget If you haven't already, go to ssa.gov. That's the government website for Social Security, and you can track your benefits there. If you're using retirement planning tools, and there's a lot of them available, probably through your brokerage or out there on the internet, plan conservatively. Plan for a worst case scenario. Use a low growth rate. Don't use 10 or 12%. Use 7 or 8%. For inflation, you've got to put something in. Use 3 to 4% or even higher. Don't use the 2 to 3%, the 2% Fed target, because I don't think it's going back there. If you get on there and you're playing around with the numbers, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. It's going to change the output drastically if you overplan versus underplan. Well, folks, we've got to take a break. We're glad that you joined us today, but stay tuned. We're going to have a short break, and then we'll be back with more financial issues.
So I was just getting on my feet, and I met someone, and I got pregnant, and I wasn't ready. How am I going to raise a baby? And I barely can take care of my daughter and myself right now. I Googled abortions, and I scheduled an appointment thinking it was an abortion clinic. When I was at the clinic, after they told me how far along I was and that the baby had a heartbeat, I cried, and they gave me a minute by myself in the room. I broke down and I prayed to God. I asked the Lord to, when I walk out of those doors, to just give me the strength to be able to go through the pregnancy. Made my decision at that time. I'm super grateful that I'm able to go down this journey with my daughter, and I'm just super glad that I didn't have an abortion. I've learned how to trust God. It feels amazing.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common, the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. We're glad that you joined us today. We're going to shift gears and get into some financial news. So on Tuesday of this week, we got out the NFIB Optimism Report, although we can't call it very optimistic this month. So if you're maybe new to looking at some of these indicators, the NFIB report happens monthly. It is a survey of around 620 NFIB members, that's National Federation of Independent Businesses, and they ask them questions about the state of their business, their plans to increase employment, to make capital outlays, so to buy equipment or invest in technology or whatever it might be for their company, plans to increase inventories if they're retail, meaning that they expect to sell more of the things that they sell. If they expect the economy to improve, do they expect their real sales to be higher? What about their current job openings, expected credit conditions? They ask them if now is a good time to expand and kind of what the earnings trend is. So to set the stage a little bit, the long-term average for NFIB has been around 98. So I think we've got, if you're watching, we've got a chart to put up there too. The current reading came in at 91.5. So that's still a good bit below the long-term average of 98, and it's barely above where we were at the peak of COVID. So if you're watching, we've got a chart up on the screen there that shows NFIB going back to 2020, or a little bit before 2020. Actually, we saw that during the Trump administration, the NFIB optimism number hovered in and around 100, so right under and right over 100. Then, of course, COVID hit. That was a very uncertain time for many businesses. The optimism index dropped to 90.9 at the peak of COVID. It rebounded once we started to get a grip on what COVID was, what it wasn't, what we were going to do about it, the amount of money that was being injected into the economy, the help that small businesses got, so on and so forth. So then it dropped back off again as the Fed started to increase interest rates. That was a big problem. Small businesses have a much higher barrier to capital. They rely on lending from institutions. The cost of lending went way up as the Fed increased rates. And then you had all of the post-COVID hiring. They were competing against large companies who had resources to offer their workers 401k plans, benefits like health insurance and things like that a lot of small businesses don't have to offer. They were also competing with the government. So, the government has been responsible for a lot of hiring in the last several years. So 91.5 small business optimism number is not a vote of confidence from small businesses for the Biden economy. Inflation is still a big problem for them. Hiring is a problem for small businesses as they're still competing with the government and bigger businesses. So this is an indicator that we'll watch. We'll see what happens as we get closer to the election. I noticed there's been a sort of a bottoming out, and optimism is starting to turn. I wonder if that coincides any with the date of the debate, of the last debate.
Seriously. Absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Seth, I think we have some questions that we need to get to,
Shana.
right?
Absolutely. Let's start here with Regina. Regina is 55 years old. She says, my husband, who is 62, has a Roth account at Schwab. He also has a Roth in his 401k plan at work. We're trying to maximize our retirement savings, but I'm confused as to whether both of these contribute to his $8,000 yearly limit. What advice would you have for Regina there, Shana?
Well, the $8,000 yearly limit, and that is because he's over 50, is separate from his 401k plan or his retirement plan at work. So that limit is, he can still reach that limit in his individual Roth and have a separate limit in the Roth 401k at work. Now, the thing that you have to keep in mind is that there is a phase-out limit for income for the individual Roth. There is not one for the Roth through work. So you're going to want to check that. It's if you're married filing jointly, it's over $200,000 this year. I can't put my finger on exactly what the number is, but it's very easy to find if you go to the IRS website and just look for income limits for Roths.
Good stuff, Shana. Next one is John. Just a comment here. He doesn't say his age, but he said that before the COVID market crash, Dan had changed the allocation models to increase cash holdings. After the crash, he modified the models to go into more equities. Thanks to Dan, my portfolio gained 20% that year. Thank you for your teaching. You have disclosed so many of the nuances of Dan's strategy that I don't remember him talking about, and I appreciate it. He says, keep up the good work. John, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. We've done our very best to keep intact the strategy that Dan used, and I was a follower of the ministry for so many years and implemented a lot of the things that Dan taught into my private practice. And since taking over, there have been a lot of things that I've been able to maintain from the strategy, and then there have been some things that I've been able to elaborate on more a little bit. So thanks for continuing to be faithful to the ministry. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Shanna, as you say often, we eat our own cooking here at the ministry.
Yes, we do.
We certainly do. Yeah, it's good. Making me hungry. That's not quite lunchtime
Me too.
yet. Walt's up next here, Shanna. Walt says, I listened to part of a Fidelity ETF seminar today. This question was from a couple days ago. He said the comment was made that in a past up market of 36% of individual stocks lost money and that 99% of ETFs made money, and that is typically the pattern. Any thoughts for a retired investor who's thinking of not purchasing individual stocks going forward and only purchasing Timothy Plan ETFs? He has a follow-up question there, Shannon. Do you want to address that one first?
Yeah, so to address the first part of that, what I would say is that a lot of ETFs mimic some type of index. And last year, it was a handful of stocks that really led the way. They were called the Magnificent Seven. That was in 2023. And those stocks ended up making up a large part of the index. And so the ETFs that mimic that did the same way. So what you saw was a very narrow rally, that there was a select group of stocks that was responsible for a majority of the return. So that's why, they're able to say that 36% of stocks lost money and 99% of ETFs made money. That's because they were made up of that handful of stocks that were really driving returns. There is an issue, I think, with, especially if you have a large portfolio, with using just the ETFs, because there are not enough biblically responsible ETFs to cover all of the areas that you need to be diversified in with your portfolio. So, there's a good bit that are in the models, but there are some areas that you really, there's not, for example, there's not a fixed income ETF. And so, you really would be at a loss on that part of filling out your portfolio if you tried to just use the ETFs.
And speaking of the ETFs, his follow-up question, Shana, is of the potential hundreds of stocks in each Timothy Plan ETF, he's wondering, are they all biblically responsible?
Yes, they are. So the way that the ETFs work, especially the Timothy ETFs, they are rebalanced, or they're rebalanced twice a year. I believe it's in March and September. So, if you screen them at any given time, there have been instances where the Timothy ETFs actually screen dirty. But what happens there is that in between those rebalances or reallocations, you may have a company that is no longer biblically responsible, and they can't immediately take it out. So they have to wait, and it's just the rules of the ETF. They have to wait until the rebalancing happens. So Timothy is very equally yoked with our ministry. Timothy is completely sold out and committed to biblically responsible investing. They are the pioneer in the biblically responsible space as far as mutual funds and ETFs go. They're celebrating their 30th year. So I'll actually be joining Timothy in just a couple of weeks for their 30th birthday celebration. So I'm excited about that. So yes, they are.
Yeah, good stuff, Shana. Last one here for the day is Walter, different from the previous Walt. His wife is 72. He's 75. They both have pensions, IRAs, and Roth IRAs. They also have a joint brokerage account. Approximate value of all of it is around $1 million. They're in the Timothy model, ages 65 to 75, rebalancing in accordance with the fixed income allocation alert from late June. While doing this, they need to keep approximately $110,000 liquid. What positions should we have these funds invested in? What do you think?
So I'm assuming that the 110 that he needs to keep liquid. If you need to keep money liquid, your only options are in the money market. Almost anything that you have in your brokerage account is liquid, meaning that you can sell it on any day that the markets are open, but you would be subject to selling it at whatever the current market price is. So I'm assuming that represents the cash portion of his portfolio, and the best option for cash. And when somebody says I need to keep something liquid, to me that means I either need to use it very soon or there's a good likelihood that I'll need to use it soon. And the best options for that is cash.
Awesome, Shana. That's good stuff. You know, we might have time for a quick one here. Claude, real quickly, just wants to know your thoughts about the trucking business. He's wondering about some trends that have been going on lately. I don't know if you want to tackle that, or maybe we can save that for another time.
Yeah, so Claude, you're on point there. You know, there have been trends in that industry. Loads are down, trucks are trucking partly full, not all the way full.
Not so trucking.
So yes, that is a trend that we do watch. So, and you're on point there. All right, folks, that's all we have for this segment. We hope that you will stay tuned. If you're watching on an outlet that only carries the short version of the show, we encourage you to hop on over to financialissues.org or get our phone app so you can catch the long version of the show every day. For the rest of you, stay tuned. We'll be back with more Financial Issues. Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org, that is preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn banner.
Here at FISM News, our mission is to provide you with news from a source you can trust.
The news is a constant reminder that this world is not our home. It is marred by sin, resulting in wars, brokenness, and divisiveness.
Jesus promised that he will return soon to judge sin and make all things new. Until then, we place our hope in him.
This is the good news, the most important truth we feel compelled to share.
So I'm trying to plan ahead, and I thought investing would be a good idea. I was going to buy some stock from Back4 Tech, Inc.
Yeah, they're actually under investigation for supplying technology that helps human traffickers.
Oh, what about microdrafts?
They support the gambling industry.
U.S. Cardboard Company, people always need cardboard.
Abortion lobbyists.
How do you know all this?
I just go by the stock list from Financial Issues.
Huh.
Feel confident and rest assured that your money is not supporting the things that grieve the heart of God. For more information, go to financialissues.org to find out how you can be biblically responsible with your investments. Go to financialissues.org today. Grow your money God's way.
Initially, when we became members, I thought, what if this doesn't work? I mean, we're going to give up this whole concept of insurance, and we're going to trust God and his people. And it was like, yeah, well, of course. I'm going to trust an insurance company to come through for me, or I'm going to trust the church to come through for me. And that's a no-brainer. I love getting the monthly share that I give to each month that has the name of a real person and their real medical concerns and a prayer request, for them. If I have a need, I know I can go get care. I can see the providers I want to see. I don't have to worry if they're in my network. And if we need medical care, Samaritan is there.
A community of Christians paying one another's medical bills. For more information, go to financialissues.org and click the Samaritan Ministries banner.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Well, thanks for sticking with us here on Financial Issues, folks. It's good to be here with you as always. Thursday, July the 11th, 2024. We're live today. So thanks for joining us here. I see so many of you on the chat. I appreciate you all so much. We'll get to some of those comments a little later on in the show. Today's show brought to you in part by our friends at Samaritan Ministries. You got to check them out, SamaritanMinistries.org. Especially now, if you're looking for something supplemental, if you're looking for really good coverage for you and your family, maybe you're a young family like me, and you want the freedom to be able to go wherever you want to go for your medical appointments, and also the joy of knowing that your medical dollars are not going to fund things that are wicked, but you're actually supporting other Christians and they're supporting you as well. You got to check them out, SamaritanMinistries.org. You can visit them from our website. Go to our website. There's a banner that flashes on the screen every so often, Samaritan Ministries. Click that banner. It'll take you right there. And I'd encourage you to join us for Bible study tomorrow as well, folks. We'll be in 2 Timothy again, 6:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 Central. Let's take a look at the markets real quickly here. So yesterday continued to rise. Markets had a good day yesterday. The S&P 500 cracked the 5,600 mark for the first time in its history. And by midday, the indices were all in relatively positive territory. They continued upward by the end of the day on Wednesday. The Dow Jones was up over a full percentage point. I think it snapped a losing streak of a couple days. The S&P 500 was also over a full percentage at a new record, as was the NASDAQ, up about 1.18%. So a good day yesterday for the markets. Now, the pre-markets, they were dipping slightly while investors awaited the CPI number that came out this morning. Then they went up a little bit because that CPI number was relatively positive. As of right now, the markets are pretty muted. So that CPI number, pretty important there for us as an indication for what could happen with interest rates. And that's one of the big headlines to look out for today, actually, is we did get CPI, consumer confidence, for June. The expectation was that it would rise slightly at 0.1%. It actually fell 0.1% from May, so bringing the annual inflation rate down to 3%. That's the lowest level, actually, in more than 3 years. And this further seemed to shore up and bolster that hope that perhaps there will be a rate cut in the near future. So we'll have to see what happens with that one, folks. But we got that pretty important inflation number out today. That's the big news for today. The big news for the rest of the week is that we get earnings season officially kicking off tomorrow. Technically kicked off today. PepsiCo reported its earnings today. I saw that it did a pretty good job with its earnings. Delta reports as well. I didn't see Delta's earnings numbers yet. We have some others also. But really it kicks off tomorrow with the big banks, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Citigroup. And then on Monday, we get more banks, Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, and others to put the Q2 earnings season for 2024 into full swing. So I wanted to get to a headline here, a very interesting one. I thought it was the big news yesterday, and I think it's great news for all of us. So a bipartisan group of senators reached an agreement yesterday on legislation that would ban members of Congress from trading stocks. This deal would forbid members of Congress, their spouses, dependent children, as well as the president and the vice president from purchasing and selling stocks while in office. Now, ethics experts, are saying that their access to information that is not available to the public gives them an unfair investing advantage. Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri said yesterday, quote, Congress should not be here to make a buck. He said there's no reason why members of Congress ought to be profiting off of the information that only they get. Now, this comes on the heels of much controversy, as you know, folks. We've mentioned on the show from time to time, surrounding the Pelosi family, of course. Their controversial success in market trading. It's well known that Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband, has been very successful in trading stocks on the stock market. And there has been questions, whisperings, wonderings if Nancy Pelosi also has partaken in some trading and perhaps even some insider trading. And that's all I'm going to say about that there, because honestly, I don't know. But there are whisperings of that. And so my opinion on that is where there's smoke, there's fire. So we have to at least consider that. The next step for this bill is that the Senate will have a committee to hear this proposal on July the 24th. Now, there's a lot of implications that are going into this. I know that right now the Republican candidate actually just put a company on Wall Street, a publicly traded company, DJT stock, of course. We've talked about that stock a lot. Donald Trump did that. I personally am a big fan of this proposal. I think it's really good. And I hope it has the legs to get written into law. Now, some critics might argue, oh, it discriminates against public servants simply because of their profession, similar things like that. I tend to disagree. I tend to disagree. I think this is a necessary boundary for a public servant. And, you know, getting to that term public servant, I think is really important for us, folks, because that is really the job of the elected official. The elected official in this country is first and foremost a servant of the people. That's a profound concept in today's day because most of our politicians, for better or usually for worse, are treated like celebrities. And they have celebrity status, and they make a celebrity level salary, or they have a celebrity level income and influence. And oftentimes they hang out with celebrities, and they get bolstered by celebrities. We saw recently George Clooney, the famous actor, was promoting Joe Biden only a month ago. I saw recently he issued an op-ed basically going back on it after Biden's dismal performance in the debate. But that kind of thing happens all the time. The reality of the public servant, though, is that that is what they are, a servant of the people. The elected official makes his living off of the tax dollars of you and I, of normal American citizens. And so he's supposed to be nothing more than a servant of the people. He works for the people. His job is to uphold justice, to make right laws, to work for the benefit of the citizens and the nation he represents before working for the benefit of foreign countries or from foreign citizens who are coming into this country. His primary job is the protection and flourishing of his own countrymen. It's very important. And I think that Senator Josh Hawley is right on with this. I think he's spot on. Congress has no right to make a profit off of information that only they are privy to. There's a definition for that. That's called insider trading, by the way. We've talked about that on the show before. Congress is there to serve the people, to serve the people. And it'll be very interesting, folks, I think, to see what kind of potential pushback we could get from this. I would imagine that it could be very telling regarding the people who might want it blocked. You would have to ask, okay, why would this particular senator want this bill blocked? I wonder why. Are they engaging in some kind of activity that would cause them to benefit from something like this not being instituted? Very interesting. Regardless, I think this is a good proposal. I think this is something that needs to happen here. Senators and congressmen are there to serve the people, not to make exorbitant amounts of money. I'm not saying that they shouldn't make a good living. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be able to serve their families and support their families, but I am saying that they are there first and foremost to serve the people. Folks, I did drop in the chat there a letter of support for you all there. We have our letter of support for Tractor Supply that we issued several days ago. We have over 100 signatures on it right now, which is great. Let's get that number up there. We want to make our voices heard for good. We don't just want to complain. Sometimes the complaining is necessary, but we don't just want to complain. We also want to encourage the companies that are doing it right. And so we want to applaud Tractor Supply. We think they're doing a great job in turning from the DEI and the woke stuff and from the LGBTQ stuff and just focusing on making a good profit, serving their customers, serving their investors. Much like the public servant, their job is to serve their customers. So it's good stuff there. So sign that today. I dropped it in the chat there, and we'll make sure to put that on social media over there as well. We've got Craig Haugaard coming up here with the Ag Report. Craig actually shared something with me. I wanted to share all of this with you all. As you may guess, there is a bit of a drought in the nation here. We're experiencing the heat up here in Pennsylvania, but it looks like grain continues to be enjoying about as good of conditions as we could hope for here. So Craig will share a little more about that in the Ag Report coming up, and then we got more financial issues right after this.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for July 11th. Well, corn saw fresh contract lows in several months as this market still tries to find the floor. The weather market continues to look good for production, and ethanol production on the weekly report followed its normal seasonal pattern as it showed a slight decline from last week. Now, if there was any positive news, it came from the managed money, which remained on the sidelines yesterday as they seemed reluctant to add to their record net short position. At the closing bell, December corn was $0.0125 lower at $4.0725. It was another weak session for soybeans, with soybean oil and soybean meal leading the charge lower. Traders seem to be of the opinion that the recent rains are adding bushels to the U.S. crop, with the average trade guess that the national average yield is going to come in at 52 bushels per acre. At the close, November beans were 13 cents lower at $10.67 per bushel. World wheat markets moved lower in unison yesterday. The world has ample supplies and really lacks a wheat production threat, so the path of least resistance remains to the downside. At the close, Minneapolis September wheat was 6.5 cents lower at $6.11. Kansas City dropped by 12.25 cents to close at $5.65.5, and Chicago was 10.5 cents lower at $5.61.5. Cotton futures continue to consolidate near the contract lows. Yesterday found the December futures closing up 38 points at 70.93. Livestock futures gave us a lot of red ink yesterday. August live cattle futures were a dime lower at $182.25 per hundredweight. August feeder cattle dropped by $1.37.5, selling at $254.35 per hundred. And we had August lean hog futures dropping $3.27.5. They put in a new contract low as they closed at $84.67.5 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures had a bit of a bounce after the preceding day's sell-off. We had the August futures up 6 points at the closing bell, settling at 20.19. This has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
In a world where financial decisions can feel overwhelming, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. But what if there is a way to align your financial goals with your deepest values? Financial Issues has helped us navigate the complex world of finance through a biblical lens. By prioritizing and investing in a way that honors God, Financial Issues has empowered us to focus on what truly matters: our family, our faith, and our future. With Financial Issues by our side, we can invest knowing that our financial decisions are in line with our values. Take the first step today and become a Financial Issues partner to access rich online resources, training tools, and guidance for biblically responsible investing. Head over to financialissues.org and learn how to invest your money in a way that honors God. That's financialissues.org.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Well, good to see you all, folks, again on Financial Issues here. The market's 15 minutes into today's trading hours. Still pretty muted for the most part. The Dow Jones is just below the flat line, while the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ are just above the flat line. Oil is trading right now at about $81.75 a barrel or so. The U.S. 10-year Treasury yields down a little bit from where they've been. They're down to 4.19%. It's what we are looking like so far on Wall Street today. Good to see so many of you on the chat there. And I want to thank you all so much, by the way, for your prayers for Josiah. I mentioned that on the chat there. He's having his first appointment for his hernia surgery tomorrow. So it's not the actual surgery tomorrow. This is just the initial appointment to meet the doctors and different things like that. But yeah, if you all would be praying for him and for Megan as well. And it's nothing too scary, but you know, as a parent of a little one, it's just never fun to think about that little guy, you know, going into surgery and different things like that. But he's a tough little dude, and so I just appreciate all your prayers so much for that. And I appreciate so many of you joining us here on the chat as well. Great to see Claude and Royce. Royce, we're praying for you for healing from your car accident as well, brother. UJ is there, Dave and Darlene, so many of you. So good to see you. We got a comment that came in on Facebook I'd love to read here. This was from Dell saying, not only the feds in Washington, but in the states too, here in Arkansas, where Dell's from, just discovered that the Game and Fish Commission of Arkansas renamed our local lake to honor one of their former board members who's influential and rich in the state. They're also spending our tax dollars on this lake by draining it, which caused a huge amount of fish to die recently, refused to clean up the dead fish, leaving lake owners and passersby in a stench of death. Dell, sorry to hear that, brother. That's rough, man. But you know what? It's exactly right. We see that happen a lot with public servants who take advantage of the power that they have. And that's, of course, why it is so important for us to be able to know who we're voting for and to know where our money is going as well. Because like it or not, we live in a nation that collects taxes. And I'm not one of those people who believes that we should not have taxes at all. I think taxes should be minimal, and I think they should be used wisely. I believe that there are some good uses for taxes, of course. I think they're military spending, infrastructure, upholding justice, police force. Those are good uses of tax dollars. This kind of stuff, pandering to former politicians and not cleaning up messes that politicians make, that's bad uses of it for sure. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, Dell. That's good stuff there. Why don't we get to a question, Grant, that we got from, I think it was yesterday's program. Let's get to Joe from Virginia.
Yeah, so for Joe asks, he knows that the Republicans are bargaining the topic of abortion with their new platform. But the problem is that he's asking, like, what are these consequences that are going to happen? Like, for instance, what does God really think about this? What does God actually like? Yeah. What would be his in terms of like the consequences of the Republicans being very complacent about this issue?
Joe, that's a good question. Thank you. For context, folks, if you missed it on Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday's show. It might have been Monday. No, I think it was Tuesday. We talked a little bit about what the GOP's recent release of their stance on abortion and. I know this is an issue that is near and dear to our hearts, even though it's not right in line with a financial issue. It has a lot to do with our finances, of course, because of our tax dollars, as we said, but also where we choose to give our money as well. So I made the point on Tuesday that fundamentally, I think the GOP's current stance is almost identical to the Democrats of the late 20th century. You really can't find much differences with them. The GOP is basically becoming what it used to be pro-choice. And the Democrats claim to be pro-choice. They're actually radically pro-abortion. So they want abortion to be shoved down every corner and be accessible to everyone, and actually to be the first choice, oftentimes, for a woman who is pregnant, which is just ghastly. Politics seems to be moving increasingly leftward. Both sides are mistaken in this. One side perhaps is more mistaken, but both sides are mistaken nonetheless. Joe, to your question, I do believe that God is just, and I believe he'll do two things based on his track record in his word as well as his track record throughout human history. So I think first he's going to work all things for good. Now, I say that not as like, it's just a placeholder for any time we see bad things happening. God's working all things for good. That's actually a true reality for Christians, that God is at work in all things, the good and the bad, and we can be confident in that. That's true for us. We have to understand that. I believe that in the GOP, there are a lot of spineless weasels, of course. I also believe that there's a remnant. There are some people who are standing strong. And on this particular issue, there are some who truly believe that unborn lives matter more than votes. That's the question here. Do unborn lives matter more than votes? Do they matter more than political power? Do they matter more than winning elections? I'm not saying we can't play the long game, absolutely, but I do believe that, look, we have to take a stand. And I think for Christians, the only natural place to stand is the protection of unborn lives from the moment of conception. That's the place where God stands, I believe. And as many of you have said in the chat, by the way, listen, politics is the long game. It is about playing the long game. I get that. My belief, my hope, my prayer in this particular debate is that one of those things we see God working all things for good is that when Roe fell in 2022, that was the first domino. And then we'll see more dominoes fall. And maybe we'll get to that 15-week nationwide ban. And then maybe we'll get even further. And then eventually the end result is a complete outlawing of abortion, because we then live in a nation that has turned back to God. Boy, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be amazing to live in America, live in an America that overwhelmingly, I'm not saying everybody's a Christian, but I'm saying that once again, the Christian values that began this country have returned to be the governing force. That would be a mighty good country to live in. Mighty good country. And I believe God can do it. Now, secondly, Joe, so the first thing God will do is he's going to work all things for good. The second thing is, and this really has to do with the fact that we should never use God's sovereignty as an excuse to overlook wickedness. I also believe God's going to punish the wicked. He's going to rightly punish the wicked. And that includes those who call themselves Republicans and call themselves conservatives, who will willingly trade unborn lives, no matter how small they are, for power. And I know that's harsh words, but God hates the shedding of innocent blood, does he not? Of course he does. He hates the shedding of innocent blood. He loves the little ones. So you can imagine how angry this makes him. Absolutely. He'll mete out justice to those who shed innocent blood. And my hope and prayer for all of those, all of the people who would be recipients of God's justice if they don't turn around, that includes, by the way, the GOP members who will overlook the severity of abortion even in the earliest stages, as well as those on the other side who will actively promote it and incessantly try to celebrate it, that they would all realize what it truly is, that it's murder that angers the heart of God, and that it would drive them to true repentance. Now, that would be great, wouldn't it? So with all that, Joe, bargaining is not going to win. You know, bargaining might get us power in the short term, but it's not going to win, especially bargaining with God. That's a bad idea. It's a failing strategy, as you said. We need to be on the right side of this. And I think for us as a financial issues family, we need to have a willingness to not invest in wicked companies. That means you follow our strategy. I saw a comment there from, I think it was Brian, who mentioned that there's a potential company that we need to look at. Brian, thank you so much for that. That's exactly what we want you all to do, is we want you to have eyes and ears on these companies so that we all together can see which companies are good and which ones aren't. So first of all, it's a willingness not to invest in these wicked companies. Follow our strategy. Secondly, it's a willingness to support the work of ministries like Preborn, who are on the front lines. That's how we can use our money and our influence for good in this fight. But all that to say, Joe, God is in control, as you said, and we can be confident that God will mete out justice. He will also work all things for good according to his purposes. We can be confident in those two things. I hope that can be of encouragement to you today, brother. That's a good question there, and I appreciate that a whole lot. Well, folks, we open the show with Proverbs 16, verse 3, which says, commit your work to the Lord and your plans will be established. And then we spent some time just talking through different ways that we can apply that to our retirement. And, you know, I think it's a good reminder, whether it's your retirement, investing, savings, whatever it is with your money, it doesn't mean that when you commit your plans to the Lord that everything that you want to happen is going to happen. I want to be clear with that, okay? We're not prosperity preachers. The prosperity gospel is ghastly. We're not controlling God, strong-arming God, shoehorning God into doing whatever we want him to do. That's not what this verse is saying. When you commit your plans to the Lord, you'll experience what true success is, and true success is operating within God's will. True success is not being wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. It's not even being healthy beyond your wildest dreams. You're going to be pleasing God when you're truly successful, and his name will be glorified when you submit to him. That is true success. That's at the core of our strategy. I mentioned earlier in the show all of the prayers that you have been giving for Josiah, and thank you again so much for those. Josiah's upcoming surgery, look, I'm really nervous about it, honestly. I really am. And I need to apply this verse to my own life. Commit your plans to the Lord, and your plans will be established. I would love to not have to put my son through surgery, you know? But I need to be confident that God is doing something really, really good. And I have no idea what kind of spiritual impact something like this could have. That's a great reminder for us, folks, to be confident in God and in what he's doing. Well, we're coming to the end of the show here, folks. We got Rapid Fire Friday tomorrow. I hope you'll get your questions ready for the show. Shana will be back. And, of course, before Rapid Fire Friday, make sure to join us as well for Bible study. You can find the information to join in on the Resources tab. Just click Join Our Bible Study. Very easy to do. And, as always, make sure to check out the buy list. There's new updates to it as we speak. So check out those buy list updates. If you need to rebalance, consider doing that. And join us again tomorrow for Financial Issues, folks. We'll be back reminding you that all you have belongs to the Lord, and we can be found good and faithful stewards resting in that truth there. Make sure to sign the petition as well in support of Tractor Supply. God willing, we'll see you again tomorrow. It was a great show. For now, I'm Seth Udinsky, and we'll talk to you tomorrow for more Financial Issues. Have a great day.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been